Welcome. We are broadcasting live from the mothership. You are tuned in and listening to Starseed Energy Radio with your host Jonah Bolt. Starseed Energy Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. Starseed Energy Radio goes live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. You are now receiving a live transmission from Starseed Radio, where you could always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. I am your host, Jonah Bolt. Today is Thursday, September 24th, 2015. The Octorian Starseed has an amazing show lined up for you today. We're joined by a very special guest, Mr. David Sereda, as well as we're going to be doing the daily download from Ryan Matthew Dernick. But first, we're going to start the show with our daily quote. Also, before we do the daily quote, I forgot to mention, please check out StarseedRadio.com for the latest news and updates. We're posting up articles all the time. And if you haven't called for your free piece of elite shungite or your free energy information, please give us a call, toll-free 888-400-2328. Again, that number is 888-400-2328. You can call anytime, 24/7. Give us your address. We'll send you out a free piece of elite shungite. It's an amazing quantum healing stone containing fullerenes. Google that and check out those amazing elements of what they do. Also, please check out starseedtechnologies.com. You could also fill out the form there and get to us that way. Our daily quote: the superior man seeks what is right, the inferior man what is profitable. That quote, Confucius. Good quote for today, this Thursday. We have the Pope in the U.S., lots of news to talk about. And don't forget, this Sunday, we're doing our Synergy Oneness event, where we have David Sereda, Dan Winter, Dave Parker, and Sterling Allen talking about energy. It's a 5-part series. You can check out synergyoneness.com. Please reserve your seat now. There's limited seating. It's going to be an amazing 4-hour amazing lineup with just some stellar information. And we're going to give you over 2,000 pages of free PDF files that have tons of information on free energy and all types of different schematics and blueprints and generators and all different things that we've collected over the years. So we really want to get this information out there and hope you can participate. Again, it's synergyoneness.com. With that, we're joined by Ryan Matthew Dernick from bellwetherpost.com. Good morning, Ryan. How are you today?
Morning, Jenna. How you doing today?
Doing good, thank you. Doing good. I'm glad to hear everything is all right with you and your girls. So good vibrations to you that have worked. So go ahead and let's get started, please, with the daily download.
Definitely. Well, in regards to the solar activity right now, other than some minor solar flares on the northern latitude, there's some weak auroras going on at the northern latitudes on Earth. Other than that, there's no really anything really alarming that's portending. And in other news, there's been a consistent aftershock still in Yapel, Chile. And other than that, there's been a couple 4.0s in Indonesia. Aside from that, the Dow has continued to fall today, which is it's already in the triple digits. It's about 225 between that and 250. And this is basically the fact that now that the Nasdaq is going into negative territory, along with other things overseas, in respect to the Volkswagen controversy. And actually, Martin Winterkorn, he was Game of Thrones on Monday, of course. He since resigned the CEO International yesterday. So aside from the over $7 billion suit that they may have to pay out to the EPA, and most likely will have to pay out over in the United States, there's about a 6.7 billion euro payout that they're most likely going to have to pay out as well. And on top of that, the fact that anyone that owns a Volkswagen from 2009 to 2015, as well as some Audi models, sadly they're losing about 20% in their value as we speak. And in other news, as we know, yesterday the Pope met in Washington, D.C. with Obama. He had a lot of words that he exchanged in respect to climate change and challenging the traditional norms of marriage. And so there's just he's going into Philadelphia, and he'll be speaking and meeting with two Catholic senators as well before he has a large fanfare and following that will be seeing the Pope. And let this be known that he is the first Jesuit Pope. Most people may or may not know that about Pope Francis. Aside from that, sadly, there was 29 killed in Yemen at a double bombing at a mosque, and of course, and most likely will be attributed to ISIS, which they will take full responsibility for. And I don't need to go into what I think of ISIS. I think they're a fabrication of Al Qaeda 2.0. And in regards to other sad and tragic news over in the march to Mecca, there was a stampede that occurred, the traditional yearly march to the Mecca by millions of followers that go to Mecca every year that can afford to do the march to Mecca. Sadly, there was over 700 killed when a stampede occurred in that area. So that
just happened recently.
That just happened today, and that death toll may go up.
700?
Yeah, it's 700 right now, but the death toll may go up because this morning it was 350, and every 45 minutes or so it would jump 100 victims or so. So hundreds injured, and so far 700 or more have been killed, sadly. And other news, this is President Xi Jinping of China is also meeting this evening with Obama to basically coax international relations.
That's right. They're having dinner tonight, I heard.
They're having dinner tonight, and on the menu is, of course, going to be, hey, what's going on? Obama will say in regards to why are we getting these hack attacks that have been occurring, and those are the reasons that you've seen some hiccups in the internet, and also the fact that now that there's some new news just recently, 1 to maybe as much as 5.6 million fingerprints were stolen from several departments within the government. So these were high security personnel that were their fingerprints were stolen, and this is just showing the breach of confidence, so to speak, and that's what they're going to be talking about. And then on the same tip, Obama will be asked in question, well, if I'm doing it, you're doing it as well. And then yesterday, as we know, we had the flyby with the aircraft that flew by a Air Force jet. So this is just an ongoing escalation, and you got to realize there's doublespeak going on, because just as President of China is going to meet with Obama, you have the Spratly Islands that are being fortified. These are armaments in the China Sea that are going to make it really hard for naval strategy on the U.S.'s behalf to be able to really establish itself more as a dominant power in that part of the world and part of the world's ocean. People may or may not know this. As you know, the Vardabunga Icelandic volcano eruption in 2015, it actually emitted more toxic gases than Europe could emit. All of Europe could emit. So people think, yes, global warming does exist, but let's keep this in mind. When you have volcanic, you have cooling gases like sulfur dioxide that go up into the atmosphere and actually can cause a cooling effect, and that happens in certain volcanic eruptions. But in other eruptions, it actually can cause a warming effect, depending upon the concentration of different.
And I think maybe we could jump to our Game of Thrones person of the day. So let's go ahead and
Today.
Go ahead, Ryan. You cut out.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about the Game of Thrones person of the day, and who we should make the Game of Thrones official person of the day. Do you have anyone in mind?
You know what? I would say that the Game of Thrones person in mind would have to be. We always are doing a bad person, but I want to say that it was. I would say it was.
What about the Pope? Can we make the Pope?
We'll go with the Pope Francis, because you know what?
Pope Francis.
We'll go with Pope Francis. We've done him before, but you know what? We'll do him again just because he's a great humanitarian. Some people might not like him, think he's a socialist, but you know what? He's trying to really unify everyone on the same page and be respectful to other people's choices in regards to non-traditional forms of marriage. So I'm going to go with Pope Francis. I'll agree with that.
All right, let's do it. Let's go with the. Or how about we just do the Vatican Church in general for the Game of Thrones person of the day?
Okay.
We get the Game of Thrones person of the day is the official the Vatican. The Vatican is the Game of Thrones person of the day.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your reporting. Everyone, please check out bellwetherpost.com for Ryan's post. He's always putting out articles 24/7. To be aware is to be alive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Now, with that, we're going to jump to our special guest of the show. We have joining us David Sereda. To give you a little background on Sereda, his lifelong aspiration was to become an astronaut since an early age. And in 1968, David and a friend witnessed a UFO along with hundreds of other witnesses. After this experience, David grew up as a UFO enthusiast, never living in doubt of the phenomenon that has swept the world since the Roswell incident in 1947. His interest in space, religion, philosophy, astronomy, and science led him on his career in related fields. He has worked deeply in high technology, on environmental humanitarian issues, and as a professional photographer for over 20 years. He has studied world religion, science, physics, and paranormal psychology for over 25 years. With that, please welcome David Sereda to the show. You can also check out his website, davidsereda.net. David, thank you so much for joining us on the show. How are you today?
Good. I'm great. I'm just, like I said before, I'm battling a little bit of a cough here from all the chemtrails, this brutal attack. My wife and baby and I moved from Sedona because the chemtrails were just getting so bad there. And our first daughter was really suffering from, lung-related flu-type things. And then we moved here to Nelson, BC, and we're actually outside of the town. And you think in the middle of nowhere there's going to be no chemtrails, but we're right on the U.S. border, and we just got clobbered in the last 3 days, just crisscrossing the skies and really low vaporous trails. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my theory on chemtrails, which I've mentioned before.
Yeah, please, let's get into that. It's a very important topic, important issue. A lot of people aren't aware of it, so please continue. Let's jump into
because we're going to be talking about frequency and also how you transmit frequencies and mind control and mind opening frequencies. So the idea is that if you take a glass of water and you use distilled water and you put your positive and negative probe, your anode cathode probe, in the water, a copper and zinc probe, and you measure the voltage, it's very, very weak. But if you put some salt in the water and some minerals like aluminum, which is what they spray on us, they spray silica and they spray even potassium and aluminum and other very toxic metals. If you do this, then you'll see the voltage go up. So what that means is that when the military sprays us, they are increasing the conductivity of the airwaves for transmitting frequencies that can actually manipulate the astral plane. And I'll give you a really stunning example. The very famous out-of-body master, Robert Monroe, did an experiment. This is in physicist Claude Swanson's book, The Synchronized Universe. And Monroe was in his sleeping area. They surrounded his sleeping area with wires, like a cage. And he described being able to go out of body and go through the wiring, and he could see his astral body going through the wiring. But with certain frequencies in the wires, Robert Monroe was trapped. He could not get out. And that is essentially what I believe they are starting to do, and they've been doing for some years now, is they're blanketing our cities and even our small towns, and they really focus on progressive spiritual small towns where people are meditating and doing a lot of yoga, and they really block the astral plane. And I've been meditating every single day and doing yoga for over 35 years now. I'm 54 years old, and I can say that when I was younger, you get really high meditating. Meditating has proven itself to me as the best high you could ever get. When I was very young as a teenager, I tried all sorts of plants and different things. And, those things are fun for a while, but once you get good at meditating, it really makes all of those things pretty useless. I mean, the quality of the high you get meditating is definitely superior. But I noticed that the astral plane and the ability to get out at night was getting more and more trapped, especially, going into the year 2000 and beyond. And my wife has noticed it too. And so what I've done is, in the last several years, when I was 51 years old, I had this massive discovery that the Great Pyramid of Egypt and the other pyramids around the world were not just monumental markers to the stars, but they were giant crystal oscillators generating electromagnetic frequencies in a sloped crystal tuner. And we use quartz crystal to do two things in electronics today. We make crystal oscillators that are responsible for generating frequencies that we broadcast various bands of radio on. And we also use those frequencies for telecommunications and cell phone numbers, etc. And then we use transistors, which amplify signals and act as gates for signals. And transistors are made of layers of quartz crystal and different types of materials like phosphorus and boron and conductive material like gold. So a crystal oscillator is a layer of quartz, and conductive material and a transistor is almost the same, but it's different. Transistors have negative, positive, negative, PNPs and NPNs, which is negative, positive, negative, charges on them to act as gates. But basically, crystal as a semiconductor has these semiconductive holes, these little vortex holes in them, which are really not well understood in physics. I mean, they like to think they understand them, but they really don't. I've really studied this from the entire history of the development of the first transistors and oscillators. And they're utterly mind-blowing physicists working on them at Bell Labs and AT&T in the early days, in the early 1900s. And the properties of crystals are utterly mind-blowing. I could talk about them for hours. We know so little about their potential. But what we do today is we make crystal oscillators and transistors smaller and smaller and smaller. There's over 3 billion transistors on a single Intel computer chip today. I mean, they're so small you need a microscope to see them. But I believe the Great Pyramid of Egypt was a giant sloped crystal oscillator tuner. So I did the math and started calculating all the frequencies in the Great Pyramid. And then when I looked at the numbers, especially on the 4 uneven wavelength sides of the Great Pyramid, which is just taking the speed of light divided by the wavelength. To give you an example, when I did the capstone base of the Great Pyramid, the math was utterly staggering when I looked at the results. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. When I calculated the actual frequency of the capstone base, which is just taking the wavelength in Egyptian inches of the capstone base of the Great Pyramid, and then actually taking the speed of light in Egyptian inches. So my resolution was super, super fine and very, very good when I did this. So you take 572.2 primitive inches times 4 sides, which is 2,288.8. And then you calculate the difference in modern inches of 1.00106. I mean, that is not even visible to the eye. That's how little the difference is from the primitive inch to the modern inch. And then you take the speed of light in inches. So your resolution is super fine, and which is 11,802,827,520 inches in the speed of light. And you just do the math. And the frequency you get for the capstone base is 5.151 megahertz square. Oh my God. That's the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. And that means that the builder would have had to have known the speed of light to end the top of the pyramid capstone base, to end it at such a height that wavelength would equal a frequency equal to the slope angle of the pyramid, because the slope angle of the pyramid is 51 degrees and 51 minutes. And this is utterly astounding, because it's the first mathematical proof that the builder knew the speed of light and that the pyramid is an oscillator, because you would never know that the frequency it would generate would be the same as the slope angle unless it had this profound meaning and purpose. So I started researching more and more about 5151, and first thing I found was that Stonehenge is sitting at 51 degrees and 1 minute north latitude. And then I found that in this book called Jesus the Master Builder, that literally the name of the first Kithara in ancient Greek. See, the ancient Greeks used numbers for every word and letter in their language. So every Greek letter in their alphabet has a number, and every word combining letters has a number. And the number for the early harp or kithara or lyra was 5-1. And I said, this has got to be symbolic of the true ancient Greek music scale, because when I started doing tone testing, so you get a tone generator and you take all of the 12 notes of the modern chromatic music scale and you put them in order, and then you switch on a tone and you switch on the next tone. You don't turn off the previous tone, because you want to measure and experience the harmonic value or the distortion between the notes, between the tones. And our music scale is very good, but it distorts quite noticeably. So then I take the solfeggio tones, which are very similar to Tyrrell's whole tones, and I tone test those, and they distort too, but they're better. But whole tones by Michael Tyrrell actually distorts worse than the modern music scale, believe it or not. And then this 432 scale that's floating around out there, which is not done correctly. There is a value to 432, but the scale that was built around it is really bad. The distortion is horrible on this particular scale. But what I do is I say, look, I don't believe Pythagoras used our modern music scale, because when you start studying the ancient Greek music scales and the overtone scales of the Greeks, you do not see the numbers as frequencies that you see in the chromatic music scale of today. And it's believed that the modern music scale came from Pythagorean mathematics and his monochord and the development of the music scale. And then you have Johann Kepler, and Kepler evolves the music scale. So you start to realize that there's something wrong here, because if the Greeks used the number 5-1 for the name of the early kithara, this gets really amazing. Then there's got to be a missing scale, a scale that's been lost, that is truly, absolutely, perfectly harmonic to the ear and to the nervous system and the brain. So I started doing the math on the base of the pyramid and the subterranean pyramid based on the slope angle like a harp, and doing my math all the way up. And I saw a pattern, and I found the numbers of a true harmonic scale. And the 515.1 is where C actually sits at, and the other numbers are below it and above it. And when I tone tested it, there's a video on Vimeo called The Lost Scale. So you just have to Google The Lost Scale in Vimeo. Watch the video and listen to the tone ups of the solfeggio tones, which are better than the chromatic scale. I have not added the Tyrrell whole tones or the 432 scale yet, because those are really bad. And it's not that there's no value in some of those numbers. They just don't know the secret code to build the scale around those sacred numbers. And I know the secret code. I found it inside of the Great Pyramid Math. So you'll also find a video on Vimeo on my channel there called The Vortex. And that's where you'll see the 5151 rules. It absolutely rules. Like if you take, for example, the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be 2.5 royal cubits in length. Now, there are a lot of cubits out there, and they're very close to each other. But when I read Peter de Missouri, considered one of the greatest mathematicians in the world of his time, his book, The Great Pyramid Decoded, he finds the most common measurement in Egyptian primitive inches in the pyramid is 41.21 primitive inches is equal to 2 royal cubits. So half of that would be a true cubit. So you take 41.21 on your calculator and divide it by 2 to get a true cubit. You get, so 41.21 inches divided by 2 equals 20.605 primitive inches is a true cubit. And now that you have a true cubit, now this is very close to 20.625 in some of the more standard cubits, 20.61 and 20.625. Those are the reigning qubits out there. But 20.605 would be a true qubit, because this 41.21 is everywhere inside of the Great Pyramid. So if God said make the Ark of the Covenant 2.5 cubits, let's take 20.605 times 2.5, and you won't believe the number you get. 51.51. The same number as the meaning of the true harp in the ancient Greek mythology. So this has to be where C is sitting at, 515.1, and then a lower octave would be 5151. So when I did the tone testing of all the 10 tones, which is a 10-tone scale, which in the book of Psalms in the Bible, there are descriptions of the 10-stringed lyre or harp, you understand that there is a metric lost scale that belonged to the ancient Egyptians and belonged to the ancient Greeks, and most likely the true Pythagorean base scale. The tones are perfect. They're the most perfect and melodic, and the distortion between the notes is so low, they just blend into each other like butter. There's no scale like this anywhere on Earth. The 432 scale is far off, and the Tyrrell tones are far off, and the solfeggio tones are the next closest thing in perfection to this, but there's only 9 solfeggio tones, but there's no scale. See, a scale means you have octaves. So this is the beginning of...
David, hang on right there. We got to take a quick commercial break. I'm sorry to cut you off. It's amazing information you're talking about. Hang on right there to that thought. You're listening to Starseed Radio. We'll be right back with David Sereda after these messages.
Even the Declaration of Independence was made on hemp paper. Thomas Jefferson had hemp fields. Let me tell you all the things organically grown hemp yields. Jack Herring tried to tell us the news. We can even use the seeds to improve our food. Build.
Visualize and implement a hologram of unconditional love above your head. This is a holographic sphere with the flower of life pattern infinitely expanding inwardly to infinity.
The all-new Sacred Geometry Shop has arrived, featuring 8 of the world's most renowned sacred geometry and visionary artists. The mission of SGS is to embed sacred geometry art, frequencies, and equations into all conventional products in order to raise the vibration and help heal one's own individual life. Products include art, canvas prints, skateboards, Galaxy and iPhone cases, clothing, hats, jewelry, home decor, yoga mats, and a new sacred geometry skincare line. Enter the word STARSEED for an additional 25% discount. Log on today to sacredgeometryshop.com and feel the vibration.
The Coral Bay Domain is an exclusive community for people with an environmental consciousness and self-sustaining spirit. It will be the Caribbean's first totally green and off-the-grid residential development. This development showcases doing more with less and energy freedom. The community is located in Coral Bay on the island of St. John in the Virgin Islands. It will consist of 16 residential units in 8 duplexes. Each unit is a geodesic dome with electricity supplied by a vertical wind generator for each unit and a shared solar array. Please visit www.domain-llc.com for more information.
Portal to Ascension is bringing forth groundbreaking information and awareness from the world's top visionaries, scientists, speakers, authors, doctors, and spiritual leaders that are assisting humanity in unlocking their true consciousness. We explore and pioneer cutting-edge information from globally renowned leaders on conscious topics through our integrated multimedia platform for online and live events. These events are designed to empower and increase awareness for all of humanity, so we may collectively shift into a paradigm based on unity, transparency, and truth. We explore explore a wide variety of consciousness relating to self-empowerment, sacred sound and vibration, UFO disclosure, ET awareness, true ancient history, quantum mechanics, metaphysics, conscious living, and spirituality. Our online platform is designed to assist you in expanding and awakening your consciousness. The Portal to Ascension website can take you front row seat live to the educators, teachers, and wisdom keepers themselves. Log on now to www.portaltoascension.com.
Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Monday through Thursday on Truth Frequency Radio.
The greatest form of control is where you think you're free when you're being fundamentally manipulated and dictated. One form of dictatorship is being in a prison cell and you can see the bars and touch it. The other one is sitting in a prison cell but you can't see the bar, you think you're free. What the human race is suffering from is mass hypnosis. We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Starseed Radio. Check out starseedradio.com for the latest news and updates. And, of course, please check out our beginning series, Synergy, Oneness of the Elements, starting this Sunday, September 27, 2015, with 4 amazing panelists, one of them on the show with us today. Please check out synergyoneness.com. Reserve your seat now. There's limited seats available. Talking with David Sereda, davidsereda.net. David, before we went to break, I know I'd cut you off in mid-thought there, so I just wanted to let you continue and pick up where you left off, please.
Okay, so the way you calculate a standing frequency or a frequency in general is a very simple formula. You take the speed of light divided by the wavelength to get the frequency. And so with a pyramid, because it's a sloped oscillator, the frequency gets higher and higher the further up you go. See, there's 3 ways to excite electrons inside of a semiconductor or a conductor. A conductor is a metal like silver or gold or, copper wire. You get electrons to move through wire to produce electricity, and the electricity is just electrons moving, and they move in copper about 2/3 the speed of light when they're optimal. And in a semiconductor, they can actually move a lot faster. And quartz crystal and most gems are in the family of oscillators and semiconductive material. And stone, as in the Great Pyramid, which is made of granite, radioactive granite in the core, and the radioactivity already causes the electrons to be very excited in the material and causes the material to emit electromagnetic radiation. And in radioactive materials like uranium, you can get you basically, in your different forms of radiation are alpha radiation, and then you get beta, which is pure electron radiation, and then you get X-rays and gamma rays. So the Great Pyramid is emitting very notable radiation. Robert Temple, when he went into the Great Pyramid and took radiation meters, found all of them were quite radioactive in their core material. And then it's surrounded by 2 different types of limestone, and that is exactly how you build oscillators. You multi-layer different materials to produce electrical difference, and that causes the electrons to really move. If you just use one material, you're not going to get as much activity. So that's why you layer semiconductive crystal oscillators and transistors with different materials. So the pyramid has all the qualities of that. But when it's sloped, it generates, the electrons get excited inside of the stone material from the radiation itself. And the most primitive way to get electrons excited in a material is to use fire. And there's good evidence of fires being burned underneath the base of the Great Pyramid. And that would be the purpose in the most primitive way. But the most advanced way would be to have, I believe the Grand Gallery was the pad for rolling up and down the slope tuner, the charge. And the electrical charger would have been probably something like the Ark of the Covenant, which amazingly has the 5151 code in it. And the fact that the Ark of the Covenant is truly 51.51 primitive inches long means that it has the same math of the Great Pyramid, and Moses probably took it away from the Egyptians, and the Egyptian armies were pursuing him to get the Ark back and not to get the slaves back, would be the new theory based on this new discovery in the math that I made. So that means this particular scale. Now, this gets really interesting because in the Gospel of the Egyptians, which is a lost Christian manuscript, Jesus teaches these tones, these ascending tones that you chant with your voice to activate your light body. And it's most likely true that the tones he used were from this scale. And he had his disciples chant these 7 tones 22 times each. And 22 divided by 7 is pi. Is 22 divided by 7. I forget whether it's pi or phi, but let's see. Let's just do it here. 22 is Egyptian pi, yeah. This is where it gets mind-blowing. You take pi times 0.5151, which is the same number, just moving the decimal over, and you get 1.618, which is the golden ratio. And so that tells you that those triad of numbers, pi and 5151 and pi, are all inside of the pyramid math, and they're all the 3 most sacred numbers in architecture and building. So that means that there's a connection. Now, if you take a golden rectangle, so you take one side times 1.6180 through 39887 long, and you create a rectangle out of it, you typically would section the golden rectangle off into squares, and then you connect all your corners and you get a Fibonacci spiral. But cut it in half, right down the middle, and make a pyramid, 2-dimensional pyramid, and measure the slope angle at the corners. It's 51 degrees and 51 minutes. But see, degrees, minutes, and seconds are all 60s. It's all 6-base math. So, right, 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in a degree. So the pyramid is just under 52 degrees in 10-base math or decimal math, but in 6-base math, it's 51. So what that tells you is the 5151 and phi, the golden ratio, are halves of each other. They're totally connected to each other. So when I had my 10 base tones in this new scale, I said, what am I going to use as an octave? Because an octave in the chromatic scale is times 2. And that's really primitive. That's just like, so you go from 440 to 880 is your next octave up for the 440 bass, and of the modern music scale of A. So you go A 440, and now some people are saying, you should shift A to 432. But see, 432, you take the square root of the speed of light, which is 186,282 miles per second, and you square root it, and it's 431.6039851. You see, it's not 432. Nature doesn't use whole numbers anywhere. Now, if you do the square root of the speed of light in metric, which is just under 300,000 kilometers a second, you don't get 431.6. You get a whole different number. So what this means is the only 2 numbers in mathematics that remain constant, regardless of your base counting system, whether you're counting 6s, like, our base mathematics in the Western civilization is 6-base. You have 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle, which is, 300 is 60 times 6. So it's all hexagram, hexa mathematics. But frequency and ratio are the only 2 numbers that, as long as your resolution of counting is ultra fine, you basically get the same number, accurate to several decimal points. So, for example, if I take a ratio of 10 meters divided by 9, because that's how you do ratio, it's a ratio of 1 to 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Now, if I convert the meters to feet and do the same calculation, I'm going to get 1 to 1, but it's not going to be as fine on the end of the decimal series, but it's the same ratio. So ratio is universal. It wouldn't matter whether you were an alien and you had a totally different unit of measure. And so is frequency. If I take the circumference of the Earth at the equator and divide it by the speed of light in metric or standard, it's the same frequency, which is it's just under 7.5 hertz. And then if you do the pole frequency, it's just slightly different. And then when you get to where Tesla measured the frequency of the Earth in Colorado, it gets really interesting how Tesla got 7.83, because with a sphere, your frequencies get higher and higher and higher near the top, and they get lower and lower and lower near the equator, and then they go back down to the South Pole. And they all blend together and they average out. But the higher you get on the Earth, that's why people in Norway report higher Earth frequencies. It's not that the Earth is changing frequency. The only way it would change frequency is if the speed of light went faster. Now, we didn't know the speed of light accurately until the 1970s. And Einstein, in his era of calculation, didn't even have a perfect speed of light. If the speed of light wasn't as perfect as we measure it today, and I did the math on the Great Pyramid, I would not get 5151, which would mean the builder knew it as accurate as we do today, which means they would have to be a technologically advanced civilization, and they would be using this scale. Now, I believe Jesus, if you Google the Gospel of the Egyptians, was using this scale of toning with the voice. And I have a course online at davidsereda.net that people can take. It's all on flash drive now, where you can actually learn how to use your voice. And there's 120 tones times 3 scales. So inside of this 5-1 scale, there's actually 120 tones that you tone with your voice to. So you start with really low frequencies, so you're chanting really low, and then you slowly get higher and higher and higher, scale up 10-tone frequencies. And what you're doing is you're toning your whole nervous system. When you use tones that you match your voice to that distort between them, distortion is caused when the waves of the two tones between each other crash into each other. And that distortion knocks the energy down. See, voltage means difference, which means the difference between 2 points to cause electrons or energy to flow from one point to another. So if you look at your 7 or 10 chakra system as tonal resonators, if you're musically tuning your chakras to distorted tones, most of the energy is getting knocked down while it's trying to go up. A certain percentage of it is going up. And that's the goal. Good music and a good scale will get you high. It'll get you high naturally because it's tuned. Our music scale is actually not that bad. There are overtone series hidden in Greek math that are actually perfect as well, but they don't use the right octave. You don't use ×2. You have to know what nature's octave is. And when I started using nature's octave, every time I generated another octave, the next set of tones further up did not distort. They were perfect. And that would mean that the real way to activate your light body, yes, if you use some of these modern tones, especially solfeggio, you're going to have an experience because solfeggio is good. The 9 solfeggio tones are much better than our chromatic music scale, but they're not perfect. They still distort. And the Tyrrell tones, which are based on solfeggio, are way worse than solfeggio, actually. They're wrong. They just distort. You can hear it. All you do, get a tone generator online and enter all the numbers as frequencies and switch on the bottom, then the next one. Don't turn them off because you want to see how they resonate together. And they just wobble. You hear this wobbling. Blah, 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 blah. So they're not in perfect tonal ratio to each other. So that is why the 5-1, in fact, a lot of the crop circles, in fact, most of the crop circles in England are sitting between the 51 and 52 degree line in the north latitude because it's a harmonic on the Earth. But you end up finding out, when you find out the other numbers, which are all I have an ebook on this, You'll just be astounded. You'll be astounded when you look at the numbers at how simple they are. None of them are whole numbers, meaning, see, 432 is a whole number. But if I take the square root of the speed of light, it's 431.60, and I mentioned the numbers earlier. So nature doesn't really have these whole perfect numbers. It has long-form numbers. And our numbers are based on our second. So if you had an alien second, believe it or not, it doesn't really matter. The tone that you convert their second to will always be the same as our tone. So if I create a specific tone based on for example, 515.1 in our second, and their second is twice as long, well, if you have twice as long of a second, the tone's going to be exactly the same. So that means that frequency and ratio are the universal language. Now, where it gets really far out is NASA knows the radius of dozens of different stars, like, 5 Palladian stars, Sirius A and B. And when I calculated those frequencies and used a scaling technique to scale up the sides of the sphere, because the frequency gets higher and higher, you realize that every star has its own set of frequencies. And that is exactly how you tune to a specific radio station today on the radio. You tune into a specific frequency, and if everybody's crystal oscillators in their headset and their radio are at that frequency, you're all hearing each other, right? So a star, the way to do a star gate and get to a star is to, instead of pulsing our body with the frequency of Earth, and we all dream at the frequency of Earth. That's theta, upper theta brainwaves, theta bordering theta and alpha. So we dream at the frequency of our own planet. So do sentient beings in Sirius dream at the frequencies of Sirius? And the answer is yes, because when you do those frequencies, as I've done, and many of my users have done, you start experiencing that star system. And beings from that star system can appear to you in the lucid, very aware dream state.
That's amazing right there, David. What you just said is a profound statement, that you can communicate with other universes and galaxies and entities by just tuning in that frequency. Unbelievable.
Yeah, see, the way it works is when any two crystal oscillators that are at the same frequency, regardless of their distance, they communicate with each other at least at the speed of light. But quantum mechanics tells us that there's a quantum function inside of the DNA that travels faster than the speed of light. So there's a way to go faster than the speed of light with tuning. And I believe the DNA in the body, if it's well tuned, will have an experience with that star system, like a mantra. Like if you get a mantra, like if you read Rig Veda, which is the oldest of the Vedas in India, which actually the earliest copies, according to B.G. Siddharth, are found in Turkey, believe it or not. There is a being called Kritika who comes from Pleiades. Just like the Mayans say, the builders of their pyramids came from Pleiades, depending on which Mayan you talk to, but there are many of them that believe that. And so what that means is that in the Vedas, you would be given a set of tonal words known as a mantra to repeat, and eventually you're going to have an experience with that star being, which we would call a god or a goddess, right? So who is from that star systems. And in the Rig Veda, Kritika is literally from Pleiades. So that means that some of the earliest manuscripts we have on the planet describe beings from different star systems. And so does the Bible itself mention Pleiades and other star systems where these super beings actually reside. So I believe this is how they did it. They used the Great Pyramid, which is a giant tuner, which means it would have an enormous amount of electrons spinning using a charger that rolled up and down the Grand Gallery rollers, and it wasn't a transporter to move the stones up and down. That's nonsense. There's no way they lifted those stones like that. And the purpose of it is it's just like if you take a cylindrical coil, like if you make your own crystal radio set, you can take a toilet paper roll and wrap copper wire around it, and then you put in a diode and you put in a little probe, and you you slide the probe up and down the coil and it changes frequency. So you listen to different stations. So that's a coil that is cylindrical. But when a coil is sloped, it's much more perfect at sliding up and down the tuner, at changing frequency. It's much more precise than a cylindrical one. So the pyramid, when you move the charge up, you roll it up the grand gallery, you're in a higher frequency. When you roll it down, you're in a lower frequency. So you're tuning. And therefore, they could actually tune the pyramid to spin huge amounts of electrons to the frequencies of specific star systems. And I believe an oscillator that size would physically open a stargate that would physically teleport persons to that other giant pyramid crystal oscillator on Mars or wherever it was. Because there's way more electrons in it. And our body is full of electrons. And if you get your body in the presence of that spinning electric field, it's going to move wherever the tuner tells it to go. And that is what yogis and yoginis do when they, like the master, the Mahavatar Babaji in Paramahansa's book, and the sister Mataji, are seen with Jesus Christ materializing their bodies, appearing and giving teachings, and then they turn back into a ball of light and they go shooting off. I mean, you can learn how to do these things through meditation. Now, I haven't been able to teleport myself yet, but I did have this one experience when I was doing this rebirthing in Sedona, Arizona, where my wife and I used to live, and I really wanted to be at the Tesla conference in New Mexico, but I couldn't make it. I just couldn't make it to go there. And several people, not just one person, wrote me and said, I saw you at the Tesla conference. I saw you there. You were there. That's you. I know you were there. And, I heard you talk and everything. And what basically happens is the more you do this practice, you can clone yourself digitally. And if you're really focused about projecting somewhere, people will see you there and you'll experience that place remotely. Now, recently, very recently, when the NASA mission to Pluto the cameras were getting close, I decided to pulse my body with Pluto's frequency because I have that exact frequency because NASA knows the exact radius of Pluto, and that's the radius times 2 times pi to get the distance around Pluto, divide the speed of light divided by that, and then I scale it. The scaling part, I don't really teach people how to do, but well, I'm doing Pluto's frequencies. I'm transmitting them through, on my website at davidsereda.net, I have mantra, vortex, pyramid angle, coil transmitters, and I have wand transmitters. And I'm actually just using the mantra transmitter. And I'm falling asleep after I meditated to Pluto. And all of a sudden, I am actually in Pluto. And I'm on the other side looking back towards the sun. And Pluto has a huge atmosphere. I'm seeing colors on Pluto that are probably not visible to the naked eye because I'm in spirit. And I said, how could Pluto have an atmosphere? I can't post this on Facebook. No one's going to believe this. It's frozen. Everything's in a frozen state. So days later, when the satellite was passing Pluto and looking at it from the far side, looking to the sun, they found it had this huge, very deep atmosphere, glowing, just like I saw. I went, oh my God, it really works. This is how you remote view using the frequency of that planet or star. And there are, according to Pythagoras, there are luminous beings living on all 9 of our planets. We don't see them in our physical state because we're beings of frequency, right? We pulse at a certain frequency, and they're just outside of the range of the frequency of the electrons and the atoms in our bodies. So we think, oh, there's nobody there. There's nobody on this planet. Everywhere NASA looks, they can't see anybody. There's nobody in the universe but us. But they forgot we're just atoms vibrating at frequencies, and we only see what's within our range. Now, I started, I've been doing meditation for so long, and I've done so many different techniques that I teach, breathing, rebirthing, very good pranayamas, and doing the toning of the scale and sitting in long, long meditations. And it was in 1994 that I had a near-death experience in Topanga, California, because I had to pitch my tent on my dad's horse ranch there, and I had no money. And during a rainstorm, my tent was flooded, and Christ appeared to me in this blinding light out of body. And within 2 days, I was seeing spirits all the time. The ability to see them optically perfectly from head to toe, was so perfect visually that it was stunning. And I actually even saw my own daughter, who just walked in here, Lyra. She's almost 5. Before she was born, when everybody said we're having a boy, all the psychics in Sedona said you're having a boy. And there's my daughter, and she's laughing. She has this wild sense of humor. She's just a wild one. And she's laughing beside the bed, glowing with this super bright light. And she would be... You want to say hi? Hi. This is my daughter, Lyra.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you for your light.
She, I said to my wife, there's a girl beside the bed, and we're going to name our son Jade Blue. But I said, but there's a girl. And she's born. I just cried my eyes out because it was a Lyra. And my newest daughter was just born.
Yeah, I want to congratulate your newest daughter. And we have about a minute left. You're going to be with the Synergy event, live webinar this Sunday. Any other upcoming events or information you want to give out? We have about a minute left.
Well, if you just go to my website at davidsereda.net, you can see the Quantum Regenesis course, and you can see the mantras and the wands. And I'm also coming out with this new lower-priced vibrational pad that you put under your meditation cushions, and it comes with an amplifier that will transmit the frequencies and physically vibrate them and vibrate the spine and activate the kundalini in the body. They're not on the site yet, but you can just write me at David Sereda, Sereda, at hotmail.com to find out more about those before I get them on the site. But I've been testing them, and it's a way of physically getting the body to receive the frequencies. The magnetic way is far deeper because we can transmit frequencies that the body can't hear. But it's so fantastic, and I'll be talking a lot more in the event coming up.
Excellent. David Sereda, davidsereda.net. Thank you so much. Your information is so invaluable. It's unbelievable information talked about. Thank you again for coming on the show, and we will see you this Sunday. You're listening to Starseed Radio.